when it comes to medical costs. You've heard a lot about that. But as you'll see tonight, it's not the reality that we've heard. Medical costs haven't come down. Since taking office, my opponent has made medical costs skyrocket by $1,300. Years ago, it was on a $59,000 salary that someone could afford a home in Utah. Today, it's $133,000. And so we have to ask ourselves, are we prepared for the situations and the realities that are going to fix and help Utah? The second one we have to understand is integrity being lived at the legislature? Are we electing representatives that represent the values that we teach our children, that we need to live in our communities? And the third one is understanding, are we better off than we were 12 years ago? And that's what I hope that you can think about tonight. Thank you.
So our first question is a three-part question, so I'm going to allow you 1 minute to answer each part. And so, Norm went first on the opening statement, so I'm going to have Jonah answer this question first. What is the state of Utah doing well that you would like to continue?
I think the state of Utah has really pushed for energy production. Energy production is the single most important product of what will determine the future of Utah. When it comes to things like nuclear, we have to invest more in nuclear for the simple reason that the world is becoming more digital than we would like, and that's going to have a tax on our citizens, and it's going to have a tax on the people around us. So that's my number one thing that I think the state of Utah is actually doing a good job of. And we need to continue to see it more. We need people who understand how to push and how to put the right policies in place so that energy production doesn't just become something for Utahns, but something that we can lower the tax burdens on everyday Utahns to then sell that energy to states around us. There's proposals already in the state Senate that talk about this, but we need leaders in the legislature that are going to push to lower our tax burdens and sell energy to other states.
Norm? Okay, Norm?
There is so much that's happening well in Utah. One of the things that I keep coming back to is that we are consistently rated as the best managed state in the country, despite the fact that so much of our federal land is locked up. Our public lands are locked up in the federal government, and we can't have access to those resources to benefit our people. Yet we still do great things for our families. We are leaders in parental choice when it comes to education. We are leaders when it comes to supporting local control. We are leaders when it comes to transportation infrastructure. We are leaders in so many ways that those are things that I want to keep going. So family policy, transportation infrastructure, as Jonah mentioned, energy. I think we're doing a fantastic job. We have managing our energy resources within the state. And I would add probably to that we are focusing on keeping our government efficient, which means that we can keep our taxes low. So every year for the past 6 years, we have lowered our taxes, which is a cumulative decrease in your income tax of 11%. And we need to keep going.
Norm, you'll answer this one first. What is the state of Utah doing that you would like to continue, but needs improvement, and how would you improve it?
I would say if I were going to pick one area of state government that involves a lot of money and needs improvement, it's our higher education system. We need to do a better job at preparing our students for the jobs that they're going to fulfill. And sometimes we get focused on higher ed being college degrees, that we want everybody to have a bachelor's degree. And there's nothing wrong with having a bachelor's degree. It's a great thing for the kids that want it. But there's a lot of kids that's just not for them. We need to teach them how to do real jobs that affect the real world. So things like the trades, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, those sorts of things. Or if they want to be a trucker and learn how to be a long-haul truck driver. Or if they want to do coding or technology. There's so many things out there that we can train our kids to do that helps them be valuable members of society, that gives them an income that they can support their families, and they can support those families into the future. So if I could pick one thing where we could do a much better job, it would be with Utah's higher education system and making sure that that's integrated from high school into post-high school training and into jobs, create that pipeline.
Noah? Or Jonah?
I believe that we shouldn't be giving taxpayer dollars to higher education, to be frank, right? Especially when we're cutting schools where those kids won't have the opportunity to go to higher education. Half of third graders in Utah have no idea how to read at their level. And that's something extremely concerning to me. And we need to understand that those kids won't be able to get to higher education if we don't focus on our school systems right now. Our school systems are barely scraping by because every year the legislature continues to cut hundreds of millions of dollars from our school systems. And I hear it from principals from schools that have to give slips every March to teachers that say they won't have a job possibly in the next coming school year. And so what we need to do is we need to work hard to fund the lower part of that education to make sure that those kids can actually be able to go to college, be able to find the trades, and understand that there is funding and it's preventative and it's the most important investment that we can give.
I would like to take the 30-second option.
Okay.
So I just want to correct something that Jonah just said. We have not cut funding for education. That is not true. This last year, we increased funding for education by 6% for public education. Over the past 6 years, we've increased funding by almost $2 billion, and that money is going through local districts. That money is going to the K through 12 system, and that's in addition, that's 49%. 49% of the taxes that you pay are going into public education. We now have the highest starting salaries of any state in our region. Starting school teachers right out of college can earn $60,000.
Can I have the 30 seconds to respond to that as well?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to talk about our region, we're talking about Nevada and we're talking about Wyoming next to us. We're not talking about the East Coast of the United States, where they spend literally double per student on what we're spending here in Utah. I wouldn't be talking about budget cuts if I didn't hear it from school board members, if I didn't hear it from principals, and I didn't hear it from ward members who came up and asked me last Sunday, I just got a slip that said art might be cut in my program or in my elementary school. Those are real stories that are happening to Utahns. And we can make the claims all we want, but that's what's happening in our lower education.
Next question. Jonah, you'll start with this one. What is the state of Utah doing that it shouldn't be that you would like to discontinue?
I think the state of Utah is pretty fiscal when it comes to what they are doing. When it comes to what they shouldn't be doing, I don't believe that the state of Utah is using effectively the tax code base to lower the amount in property taxes that we pay on our taxes. There are ways that we can fund to be able to make sure that people actually own their homes at the end of the day, right? I met a widow who is on a fixed income where she can't even afford internet, a $60 internet, because her taxes have risen 3 times in the last 6 years. And we have to find ways to effectively lower property taxes in order to put families in homes that they actually own. We shouldn't be pushing ourselves forward and increasing taxes in the ways that aren't lowering property taxes, in my opinion.
Well, I find that very interesting that on the one hand, he claims about us not spending enough on education, but he wants to cut your property taxes.
Yes.
Property taxes fund education. That's how education is primarily funded in our state, is through your property taxes. So you can't, on the one hand, argue, well, we're not funding education well enough, but again, we need to cut property taxes, because that is a one-to-one correlation. Every dollar that's cut in property taxes is 60 cents that's cut in your local schools. But something that I think is not going right in our state and that could be doing a lot better is we have still too much government involvement in too many things. We don't respect local control enough. I still see a lot of my colleagues that are sponsoring bills telling school districts about curriculum, about how to run their lives and how to do that stuff. I think we need to get back to letting the school districts, letting the parents decide what's best for those kids. And that's one of the things that I think we could do better. We're not doing like horribly at it, but I think we could do so much better, but at respecting local control, whether that's school districts, city councils, or whatever, what have you.
Can I have the 30 seconds to respond to that? When we talk about the tax base and we talk about home ownership, The number one thing that someone should be able to do is pay and own the home that they paid $800,000 for. That doesn't mean that we can't shift the tax base in different directions. It was Norm Thurston who proposed legislation this session to actually take away the ability to tax from the counties in areas like restaurant, in areas like tourism, which would have actually hurt different counties and would have hurt different cities. And so when we talk about the tax base and what we're doing, we need to do it differently.
Yeah, I don't think he read that bill. The bill said we have a very inefficient tax. What we want to do is lower the restaurant tax, which is a very specific tax, and spread that, broaden the base and lower the rate. Counties would have actually had more money to fund those tourism and programs. But it still comes back to that fundamental fact that our property taxes fund local needs. They fund counties, they fund cities, they fund school districts. Yes, there has been some problems with the way that those rates have been adjusted because the residences are paying a higher share than the commercial. That is a structural issue that's in our marketplace, and it's something that we should look at, but just cutting it isn't going to work.
I think you've had 12 years to look at
Next
that.
question. Norm, you'll start with this one. HB 572, passed in 2024, was intended to promote affordable housing. In the recent session, HB 492, HB 68, and SB 284 were passed to help alleviate Utah's housing crisis. Yet housing affordability remains one of the top concerns of Utah voters. What are the underlying factors behind this affordability crisis, and just how much can the legislature really do to address those factors?
Is it okay if I just repeat the question before I answer it?
Yeah.
Before I start?
Or
Okay.
can we have Ben repeat the question?
Yeah, just repeat that so they could,
Okay.
I don't think Rita could hear it. There isn't a mic.
There's seats up here, though.
Yeah.
So HB 572, passed in 2024, was intended to promote affordable housing. In the recent session, HB 492, HB 68, and SB 284 were passed to help alleviate Utah's housing crisis. Yet housing affordability remains one of the top concerns of Utah voters. What are the underlying factors behind this affordability crisis, and just how much can the legislature really do to address those factors? Norm?
Yes, so often we look at problems like this, and you have to ask yourself, is government the problem or is government the solution? And Ben just named several bills where I think you would say government is actually the problem. Government tried to be the solution, but it didn't work. What do we need to do? We need to get government out of the way. We need to remove restrictions that prevent builders from building things, and we need to respect the opportunity of the marketplace. The marketplace is such a powerful tool. When prices are high, that signals to people to innovate. It signals to people to do better, to be able to do things in a new way, and to bring in new opportunities. If you as a government try to do what Hayek called fatal conceit, by thinking that a central planner can figure this out by giving subsidies or by giving people money and trying to encourage them, the outcomes one way or another, you're going to fail because you're taking that information out of the marketplace that signals to people, here's an opportunity. Just get the government out of the way, let the market respond, let the builders build, and let the people reap the benefits of a free market system.
Yeah, I think the largest issue facing Utahns right now is the ability to be able to use land effectively. When we only let builders build on 10 to 11 acres at once, that lowers the ability for them to be able to make money. We need to open up more land for them to build on, which then creates a better community and outcome. He talks about how government is the problem in this case. It's not the problem in this case. We have to see action from the legislature to lower home prices, and we can see that. We can see that from lowering capital gains tax from people who want to sell land to home builders to allow that. What we are forcing our children into is paying $400,000, a $2,500 mortgage to live in 600 square feet inside of an apartment, and that's not the American dream. It's dying because of that. Kids can't feel grass, they can't play in their neighborhoods, and we need to solve, and the legislature needs to push solutions to be able to do that.
Next question.
Next question. Mm-hmm.
Southern Utah County communities are increasingly dependent on groundwater. What is your position on state-level water rights reform? Jonah.
The issue with understanding how water works in Utah is that every municipality typically takes water from different sources. And we all have different plans. What the state needs to actually do and come together is make a plan for water that's going to work for the entire state. Right now we have cities back and forth understanding of how they want to take their water, how they want to take their share, and we need to come together as a state. We see this in growth, we see this in planning, we see this why we don't have the proper exits, we need to get off the freeway. It's why we have one-way lane roads, is because we aren't planning as a state. And when we become too focused on getting to do with water now, when what needs to happen is the state of Utah needs to go to other states, like California.
For sale. So it is a system that is arcane and has some weirdness to it because it was set up a long time ago, but it does work quite well in terms of the markets. The more important thing is to understanding how the government water is used. So municipalities like Provo and Springville bought a lot of water a long time ago, and we actually still have a lot of those water rights that are part of that system, and I hope those cities never sell them. I hope they use those for development.
Next question, Utah County is one of the fastest growing counties in the nation. How do you balance property rights and local control against the infrastructure strain caused by
Half lanes of traffic on our freeways that we don't have to build. So where do you want to invest? And the answer is you want to invest in broad-based options for people to get into those different modes of transportation. I'm super excited for double tracking to happen in Provo. It should be ready in about a year. Be able to ride a train every 15 minutes to Salt Lake City. Be able to get there in about 50 minutes. It'll be fantastic.
Jonah? Jonah?
Yeah, and I think that we have to look at the difference here between doing and what the legislature, where commercial is going to go and these roads. We need a champion in this district for the growth of Utah County, and we see a lot of mandates kind of coming down from Salt Lake of how Utah County should grow and how we should push this direction. But in my experience and what I've worked on in my life of working in planning companies is that we aren't planning effectively. And it's great that the legislature is doing this, but our legislator is not doing this. And we need a legislator who's going to push in that direction to be able to be actively planning in Utah County.
Do you want to ask 30-second response?
I would love a 30-second response, yes. So I think everybody here understands that Utah County is one of the most powerful caucuses in the state legislature. We're not individuals, we're a team. We meet together as Utah County legislators to discuss things like corridor preservation, investment, airport funding, et cetera, et cetera. We work together as a team to do that. Then we also work with Mountain Land Association of Governments. We work with our county commissioners to make sure that we are all on the same conservative principles, results-oriented team. My role in that has been to advocate for funding for the Provo Airport. That's my role on that team.
Okay, next question. Jonah, you'll lead off on this one. The legislative process has been criticized more and more lately. Things like a record number of bills being introduced, suspending the rules at the end of the session.
Yeah.
Some legislators are running so many bills they frequently miss their own committee meetings. Enormous bills going for 8,000 to 10,000 lines, and more bills that appear to be omnibus bills. Many of these things seem to favor special interest and lobbyists. Now, this is a two-part question. I'll give you a minute to respond to each part.
Sure.
But I'm going to voice both questions
Yeah.
at the same time. What do you think are the biggest issues in the legislative process, and what would you propose as ways to fix those issues?
The biggest issue in the legislative process is maintenance politics. So what the legislature has to do a lot of times is continually go through maintenance politics. And that is passing legislation that only deals with 3 or 4 lines. And that ends up costing taxpayers upwards of tens of thousands of dollars sometimes from using those sessions and using those committee times. And what we need to do is we need to look for ways to only pass legislation that's actually going to make a difference. I've been the one that has stood up and said, we don't need 1,000 bills this legislative session. I haven't heard that from other people. It was Leah Hansen up in Eagle Mountain who this time around voted no more than anybody since 2007 because she can't read every bill. And she said she took the time continuously to read every bill, to make sure that every bill made sense, and she couldn't get through them. And so we need legislators who understand that we have to have a session that isn't going to be 1,000 bills and isn't just going to be full of maintenance. I understand that we have to have maintenance in politics, but we need something more.
All right, Nora?
So so it's a two-part question, right?
Yeah. What do you think are the biggest issues in the legislative process, and what would you propose as ways to fix those issues?
So the biggest issues that I see in the legislative process are that legislators don't talk to each other enough. Senators and representatives don't talk to each other enough. So you will see of those 1,000, however many bills, you will often see 6 or 7 bills on the exact same topic trying to do the exact same thing. We try to fix that, but that still doesn't happen. And I wish that would happen better. The other part of the legislative process is things get done too late. Things happen in December or January, and then we're expected to deal with it. And so it's a real problem that there's too much, too late, coming at you all at once. So I think that's part of that. The other part of the legislative process that I think is tricky is that not everybody will be able to understand exactly what bills do. And when you have these omnibus bills like Ben mentioned, there are little Easter eggs hidden in there, and you have to have people who are meticulous in reading those bills to find those things. So I had multiple occasions this session where I was able to find things that were hidden in somebody's bill and say, hey, I don't think I want that to happen. Let's take that out.
All right.
So are we going to do the second part?
Yeah. Do
Okay.
the second part.
Can you repeat the second part of the question?
Second
Raymond?
part is what would you,
For quite some time to be able to propose that, and they haven't proposed that the entire time. We have to pass ways that we can't run through a session at the end of the time to just put 200-300 bills in a matter of 5 or 6 hours. That's not fair to the Utah taxpayers. And we've had time to be able to make those changes, and we need to make those changes now. And that's why leadership is going to become so different and needs to be different in every way, right? When you've been doing the same thing for the same amount of time, I do this in work. I do this as a consultant. I go into companies and I see that for 15 years they've been doing it the same way, the same amount. And as soon as I come in, 25 minutes later, I can identify how they can do it differently, and they literally save millions of dollars. That needs to happen here, where we need new leadership that is.
The last 2 years, we finally got it passed this year, I've been working so that the citizens will be able to have a short summary in plain language that the sponsor writes down. This is what my bill is intended to do. And that next fall, as soon as the bill is, and I guess we're out of time. And I guess we're out of time.
all right, next question, and Norm, you'll answer first on this. Mail-in ballots are immensely popular among Utah voters, yet bills to tighten election security keep coming up in our legislative sessions, and their impact is almost always to make mail-in voting more difficult. What data do we have that shows this is a significant problem? If you believe more should be done to strengthen
Enough that mail ballots are enough that mail ballots are the #1 best way of cleaning up the voter rolls. When they send a ballot to an address and it comes back not deliverable, they know that that is a bad address. They fix that in the system. So that's the #1 thing we do, is clean up our voter rolls. That's really all we need to do.
John?
Yeah, I don't understand, and I think mail-in voting is extremely important for people who need mail-in voting. I don't understand why we're the only civilized country in this world that can't vote same day. I just don't get it. I don't get why we can't go to the polls, why we can't focus on making sure that everybody goes to the polls and we vote the same day, right? We've heard bombshells from people in the last presidential election that 2 weeks prior they had submitted their ballot and they wanted to change their ballot. They wanted to vote for the other candidate. And so what we need to focus on in Utah is giving the people that want mail-in ballots the ability to have mail-in ballots, but we need to vote same day. It's a national holiday. It's what we need to do to make Utah's election secure